Today's story sounds like fiction, but every detail came from real newspaper articles. A young widow has a disturbing dream, and when she wakes up, the dream is still waiting outside. She dreams of a dying woman in a shed, a woman who moans like a ghost and wears her dead husband's face. But when she jolts awake, drenched in sweat, she sees it through the window. The same shed, in the same field, moaning, waiting. And somehow, that nightmare is the only reason her husband came back from the dead. Mary was 26 when she took the train out of London. It was a crisp September morning in 1885, and the countryside was just beginning to turn orange at the edges. She sat alone in a hired carriage, watching farmland blur past the window. She hadn't traveled this far in years, not since before him. 2 years earlier, her husband had died in what they'd called an accident. The kind of vague word people use when they're too polite to dig. Whatever it was, it left Mary widowed, hollowed, and completely unrecognizable to herself. Friends had stopped asking how she was doing because they already knew the answer. Her family stopped visiting. Her husband's family, especially his aunt, were the only ones who still called. That's where she was headed now, to the old family estate, nestled in the English countryside. The house was enormous and cold, the kind that always smelled like rose water and thyme. It was quiet there, which Mary didn't mind. Quiet was better than feeling. The maid greeted her at the door and took her suitcase to the guest room. Mary walked slowly down the hall to her husband's aunt's room, where the old woman lay in bed, frail and fading. They talked in whispers, about the journey, about the food, about anything except grief, but at some point, the aunt looked up at her and asked softly, "Really? How are you holding up?" Mary didn't answer. She just smiled, said she was tired, then went to bed. That night the nightmare came. In the dream, Mary was standing in a field, under moonlight, cold wind on her neck. Ahead of her was an old wooden shed, rotting and crooked, like it had slouched under the weight of something it had seen. From inside, she heard something moaning, low and broken, like someone in pain. Her feet moved before she could stop them. Step by step, across the frozen grass, toward the shed. Her heart thumped harder with each step. The closer she got, the louder the sound became. Something alive was inside. She didn't want to open the door, but her hand did it anyway. Inside, curled in the corner, was a woman, emaciated, pale, crumpled like paper. She looked up slowly, and Mary saw her husband's face. She woke up gasping, soaked in sweat, heart beating too fast. It was just a dream, except when she glanced out the bedroom window, she saw something, a field, a shed, and someone inside, moaning, just like the dream. Mary didn't remember leaving the house. All she knew was that one moment she was staring out the bedroom window, and the next she was walking through the grass in her nightgown, boots half-laced, clutching a small flask of brandy. The field was real, the shed was real, and the moaning inside, very real. Every instinct in her screamed to turn back, but something, maybe curiosity, maybe fate, pulled her forward. Her hand reached out, just like in the dream, and flung the door open. And there she was. A woman. Not a ghost. Not some vision. A real, breathing woman, crumpled on the floor of the shed. She looked half dead. Skin like wax, lips cracked. Her eyes flickering open, just enough to notice Mary. She didn't speak. She couldn't. Mary didn't know who she was. Didn't know why she was here. Didn't know why every detail, the position, the light, the smell, matched the nightmare exactly. But none of that mattered right then. What mattered was that she was alive. Barely. So Mary sat with her, pulled off her coat, gave her a sip of brandy, covered her with whatever she could find. And when morning came, and Mary could finally run for help, she flagged down a man on a wagon passing by. Together, they carried the woman back to the aunt's house. Here's where it gets strange. Mary collapsed that afternoon with a fever. A bad one. Bedridden for weeks. In and out of consciousness. Didn't even remember being sick until it was almost over. But when she finally opened her eyes, weak and trembling, she saw someone sitting by her bed. It was the woman from the shed. Only now she looked completely different. Clean, fed, healthy. She smiled. She looked relieved. Then she started talking. And what she said changed everything. She told Mary that 2 years earlier, she'd been on a ship traveling from England to Brazil. 5 days into the journey, the ship caught fire. Most people didn't make it, but she did. Because a stranger, a man, had broken into her room during the chaos, pulled her out, and got her into a lifeboat. They drifted for days before landing on a deserted island. They survived there together for over a year. But when they were finally rescued and brought back to England, the man, the one who'd saved her life, was too far gone. His mind was shattered. He was placed in a hospital. Forgotten. No name, no visitors. Just a shell of who he once was. She felt she owed him everything. So she tracked down his family. She walked hundreds of miles across England, on foot, without money, without food. Desperate to find them. Desperate to tell them that the man who saved her life, the man who'd been declared dead, was still alive. Mary stared at her, frozen. "Who was he?" she whispered. The woman smiled. "You already know," she said. Then someone stepped into the room. It was him. It was Mary's husband. He wasn't dead. He'd never been dead. He'd been lost at sea, forgotten in a hospital ward, slowly fading away. Until Mary had that dream. Until she walked into the field. Until she found the only person who knew the truth. Mary didn't ask any more questions. She didn't ask how her husband, the man she buried in her grief 2 years ago, could be standing in front of her now. She didn't ask how a stranger could appear in her dream before they'd ever met, or how a nightmare could lead her to a shed that wasn't on any map. Because the answers didn't matter. He was home. And for a few days, it was like time folded in on itself. The past didn't matter. The lost years didn't matter. He was here, holding her hand again, breathing, smiling. And she felt like the world had given her something back that no one was ever supposed to get. But still, something lingered. The woman, the one she saved, never left the house. She stayed quietly in the guest room. She never made eye contact, never joined them for dinner. She just waited. On Mary's last night in the countryside, she passed the guest room and saw the woman sitting on the bed, hands folded, staring out the window toward the field. That same field. "Do you dream often?" the woman asked, her voice calm. Mary stopped. "Not anymore." The woman smiled faintly. "You will." And that was the last thing she said. When Mary got back to London, she tried to find records of the fire, the hospital, the island, anything. But there was nothing. No ship manifest, No patient list, no proof any of it ever happened. Just the memory of a nightmare, and the man who came back because of it. Years later, newspapers picked up the story, called it a miracle. Others called it impossible. But no one ever explained the dream, or the shed, or why the only person who could lead Mary to the truth nearly died in the exact place her mind had imagined. Today, the shed is gone. The field is fenced off. The house is empty, but on certain nights, when the sky is clear and the moon is low, locals say you can still hear it. A woman's voice, moaning, just barely audible, from somewhere deep in the field, waiting.